All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's good you're all back in this plenary session. My name is Jos Bijman. I'm your moderator of this hour, this session with the keynote speaker. Most of you know me, but I'm from the Netherlands, Wageningen University. But that's not so relevant for this. We have a keynote speaker, a famous keynote speaker. We have Vasilis Kostakis. He is, and now I have to use my text, sorry. He's a professor at the Tallinn University of Technology in Estonia. He's also a faculty associate of Harvard University. He's the founder of the P2P with peer-to-peer lab, a member of the Peer-to-Peer Foundation. And he also recently wrote a book on network society and the future scenarios for a collaborative economy. So since we're all dealing with the challenges and the opportunities of digital technologies, the digital era, and we're all interested in all types of collaboration, I think this is the cooperatives in the digital era is a perfect title for a keynote speech. So may I invite Vasilis to give his address.
Thank you. Thank you, Jos. So I'm here to talk about, as Jos said, about cooperativism in the digital era. So an alternative title of this presentation could be, or why is cooperativism important, especially today? And I'm going to argue that cooperativism is important, especially today, because it can help address this twofold problem, which I believe is the major problem that our generation has been facing. That is to say, environmental degradation, environmental crisis, and global wealth inequality. Of course, now this begets the question, how? And the very concise and brief answer to this question is by building a globally connected but locally oriented cooperative economy. Okay, the presentation has not finished, it has just started, because we need to go deeper and thus try to shed light on how this very abstract proposal of mine could be materialized. So, I'm arguing that by empowering the sixth and the seventh principle of the cooperative movement, of cooperativism, we could somehow, and I'm going to try to very briefly illustrate how this somehow could look like, could address environmental crisis and global wealth inequality by empowering, as I said before, cooperation among cooperatives and the concern for community. Again, same question, how to do it? By using lessons from the new Commons initiative. Okay, again. To begin with, what is the Commons? And why it is important to discuss this new-old concept and praxis nowadays. Very briefly, the Commons is a social system that is characterized by a resource, by the community that is gathered around this resource, and by the rules and the norms that this community co-defines in order to maintain, govern, and further enhance this resource. So, as I said, the Commons, very briefly, is a social system by which communities successfully, effectively, sustainably co-manage resources. So, Commons is actually a process. It's not only related to a resource, but as I said before, it consists of three interrelated spheres. So, examples, very typical, the pasture commons that consists of the pasture land, the resource, the shepherds, which is a community, and the governors, the rules that the shepherds community decide and codify in order to manage a certain piece of land. Or we have the fisheries and other commons. Again, first sphere, first entity, if you will, is the fish, the resource, is the fishers, the community of fishers, and we have also the rules that the fishers community, again, co-decide in order to co-manage these certain fisheries, certain fishery commons. We have cooperatives. A work and own cooperative, for instance, is an example of the commons. We have the resource, which is a cooperative, this type of organization that we are here to talk about, and we have been talking since at least yesterday. The workers, the community of the people that manages this certain resource according to rules that this community codefines. But we have also some new commons coming from the so-called digital era, such as Wikipedia. The Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia, is the resource. We have the Wikipedia community that includes the contributors, and not only them. And we have the rules that are co-defined and dictate how this resource is further developed. Or we have free and open source software. Again, the same pattern: software, contributors, governance. Now, why are the new commons, and I'm referring to the digital commons, the last two, so important, especially today? Because, I'm going to argue, they demonstrate, they have some potential, or they demonstrate some potentialities to outperform and even transcend capitalism. For example, Wikipedia, in just almost less than 2 decades, managed to outperform industrial, if you will, capitalist initiatives by Britannica and even by Microsoft. I'm referring to the Microsoft Encarta digital encyclopedia that existed, that actually was established in early 90s. Or we have the free and open source software initiatives. We have many of them. For example, these are the so-called supercomputers, the master machines. They consist the backbone of what we understand today as a digital economy, and the absolute majority of them, not the majority, all of them, are using GNU Linux, are using free and open source software, a kind of software that has been developed more or less in the same way that Wikipedia, to which I believe most of you are familiar, in the same way, in the same bottom-up distributed manner. So these are some cases that have demonstrated that bottom-up ways of doing things, by being motivated not only by the profit motive to maximize profits, they can somehow today result into initiatives that can outperform the similar capitalist profit-driven initiatives. But we can go even beyond software, and I'm going to refer to a certain realm, the realm that deals with small-scale agricultural machinery. In order to demonstrate how we can move from software to hardware and why this is important for the cooperative movement, and how, finally, we can address this twofold problem. So, small-scale farmers rarely find appropriate machinery to support their work. So, a cooperative from France, L'Atelier Paysan, they have designed and manufactured their own agricultural machines. But, and these machines have been locally manufactured by L'Atelier Paysan in France. But L'Atelier Paysan decided to share software designs, any knowledge, any piece of knowledge that is related to the replication of this small-scale agricultural machinery with the world. So other communities, maybe cooperatives, NGOs, informal networks of people, collectives, etc., they have coalesced around these certain knowledge commons, digital commons, yeah? And they have been further developing and benefiting from this globally shared resource. So since we are in Greece, I'm going to refer to one of these communities that was inspired by the French cooperative of L'Atelier Paysan. And this community is based in my home town, my home village in Jumerka. So this is the Jumakers community makerspace that is based on mountainous Greece. So a typical process that takes place not only in this Jumakers makerspace, but in other similar places. What is a makerspace? It's just a small-scale factory. Let me put it like this, okay? So people gather, in that case, you have engineers, farmers, other local people with an interest on discussing their needs. Then we identify and customize solutions, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we look at the web, we look at this globally shared digital commons to see whether any other community has addressed the same problem or a similar problem, therefore building on what has already been created. And the solutions are customized, taking into consideration the local needs, the local biophysical conditions, and the local culture. So manufacturing takes place locally. Here you see, for instance, the inner part of an aromatic grinder, an open source aromatic grinder. And finally, the artifact is tested and shared with the community, or is given to the person that has decided to financially support the development of a certain artifact. So, from the standpoint of Jumakers, this is the network, the global network, the most important member, not important, the most, how can I say, close collaborators to Jumakers, that actually they are small, they are locally oriented, but globally connected. So they are creating a kind of certain entity which is not like, you know, these big corporations, or like even Wikipedia, which is very large scale, etc. It is again large scale, but it doesn't scale up. It scales wide, or it upscales. So this is the global network of similar communities that have been facing similar needs and are trying to address their needs by designing globally and manufacturing locally. But these initiatives, or this phenomenon, spans a wide array of sectors. We have wind turbines, so small-scale wind turbines, again the same pattern. We have digital commons, designs, knowledge, software, whatever. A large part, or an increasing part of manufacturing takes place locally. And then we have the artifact that hopefully has been manufactured in such a way that can be maintained by the local community or by an expert that is based in the place. We have prosthetics and other robotic devices. We have houses. We have, this is actually the first open source satellite, nano-satellite in orbit. Again, the same pattern, designed globally, manufactured locally. And we have even 3D printers that actually have created a multi-billion-dollar market using the same, again, approach in their modus operandi and development. So, the pattern, digital commons, we have maker spaces or other community spaces like that actually can build upon these digital commons and localize part of manufacturing. And of course, these maker spaces are situated within a certain spatial reality, culture, etc., trying to address real local problems. Hence, what I'm trying to suggest here is the idea of open cooperativism, that is to say, of a cooperativism not strictly defined by, for instance, in the network that, the open source agricultural network that I showed to you before, we have cooperatives, but we have also NGOs and other types of organization. But the idea is that we, or this network, shares what can be shared, what is light, that is to say knowledge, becomes global, and what is heavy, machinery, is local and ideally shared. So we go in a way beyond this polarity, global versus local. I already referred to this kind of mantra. Okay, light, knowledge, heavy, for example, machinery. And it goes even beyond this, again, polarity, another polarity actually, high-tech versus low-tech. You know, high-tech is a useful group of some tools that address some problems very often in a seamless way, in a very automatic way, but they bear with them some negative externalities, to put it in economic terms, because they are based on cobalt, lithium, and minerals that are extracted in the Democratic Republic of Congo, etc. So we have noticed that such initiatives, because the knowledge aspect is open, these entities try to address their local problems, hence they can synthesize the best aspects, to put it in that way, very roughly speaking, the best aspects of high-tech with low-tech. We have some examples, but we don't have enough time to go deeper here, to refer to some real cases of what may be called as mid-tech, something in between low-tech and high-tech. So any concrete proposal, after all, that can be of interest to the International Cooperative Alliance. Roughly speaking, what I'm trying to communicate today could be summarized that cooperatives could commodify products and services for the market, and at the same time we have the means of production and enough know-how nowadays to commodify knowledge, design, software for other cooperatives or other social and solidarity economy institutions. To put it in another way, commons for the commoners and commodity for the capitalists. But again, the question is, or another question, a lot of questions, no? How to protect against the big capitalist corporations that very often would, if something is a commons and open for everyone or open under certain conditions, still very often we have enough examples where they come, they use the part of the commons, of the knowledge commons that is useful to them, and they may not contribute back to the commons. So there are some licenses, like the Creative Commons licenses, that contain different degrees of freedom. Not enough time to go deeper here, but during the discussion we can refer to the problems and the good aspects of Creative Commons licenses. We have even another license that is quite interesting, I think, and it can spark our imagination and discussion later. The peer production license that says that only other worker-owned businesses or worker-owned collectives can share and reuse the material, software, designs, whatever, but not entities that are going to make profit through the commons without explicit reciprocity. my argument is that through this policy, if you will, or proposal, political proposal, the sixth and the seventh principle of the cooperativist movement nowadays can be refreshed, it can be enhanced, building on the lessons that we have learned through new initiatives and taking advantage, reaping the full benefits of the digital technologies. So for example, to begin with, a proposal could be that only other International Cooperative Alliance members could share and reuse the material. This could be a pilot project. If a license by the International Cooperative Alliance is developed, a certain license like the Creative Commons license, but one license that would reflect the consensus within the alliance, and it could, as I said before, further empower the sixth and the seventh principle of the cooperative movement. Yeah, so the idea, and I'm gonna close my presentation with hopefully inspiring sentence. The idea is to build a global counterpower by creating the world we want within the confines of the world we want to transcend. Thank you.